The roads of rural Wisconsin lay buried beneath a thin sheet of powdery snow, the kind that made headlights blur into halos. The Blackwell family minivan inched along slowly, tires crunching across the icy driveway that stretched like a white carpet toward the looming colonial house at the end. Inside the car, silence pressed heavier than the falling snow. Sayers Blackwell's fingers clutched the steering wheel tighter as she guided the van toward her parents' immaculate home. Each flick of the wiper blades smeared the reflections of Christmas lights strung across the windshield, bright reds and greens that glared like mocking jewels against her tired eyes. In the passenger seat, her husband Mateo reached over, his paramedic's grip warm and steady as it closed around her trembling hand. He was 38, with calloused palms and the quiet strength of a man who'd seen too much from the back of an ambulance. "You okay?" he asked softly, his voice carrying the kind of calm only years of emergencies could teach. "I'm fine," she lied, the word brittle in her throat. Both of them knew she wasn't. In the back seat, Emma, 9 years old, thoughtful, with a stubborn jaw that reminded everyone of Sayers' late grandmother, clutched a neatly wrapped pan of peppermint brownies. Her younger brother Jake, only 7, traced the edges of 2 hand-colored Christmas cards with his small fingers. They had spent hours making them, cutting candy cane ribbons themselves to tie the packages with shaky knots. Jake bounced his legs nervously. "Will Grandma like these?" Sayers forced a smile into the rearview mirror. "Of course she will. Remember what we said. Christmas isn't about expensive things. It's about being together." Emma repeated their mantra solemnly, almost like a prayer. Presents, not presents. The words stung Sayers' chest with pride and sorrow all at once. It was the phrase they had clung to for months now, ever since Mateo's overtime shifts at Green Bay Mercy Hospital were cut back, slashing their budget to the bone. Bills stacked higher, groceries became plainer. Yet still, they had tried to hold on to dignity. The van pulled into her parents' long driveway, lined with lanterns glowing in perfect symmetry. Every wreath was identical, crisp evergreen circles with velvet ribbons, almost certainly custom-ordered at $300 apiece. Sayers parked and let the engine idle for a beat, staring at the house that had never truly felt like home. "Ready?" Mateo asked. She nodded, though her throat had closed so tight it hurt. The family climbed out, crunching across snow that had been shoveled so meticulously, it might have been ironed flat. Emma's small boots squeaked. Jake shivered, hugging his card bundle close to his chest as though the paper itself could shield him. The front door swung open before they had even reached it. There stood Carolyn Stone, Sarsth's mother, immaculate in a cream cashmere sweater and a string of pearls. Her lipstick was flawless, her smile tight, her tone sharper than the frost outside. "There you are," Carolyn said, air kissing her daughter's cheek. "We all agreed, no gifts this year, remember?" Relief rushed through Sarst so suddenly, she almost sagged. "That's right," she answered, tension leaving her shoulders just enough to exhale. She held up the pan of brownies. "The kids made something, though." Carolyn's eyes flitted over the modest treats, like they were curiosities from another planet. "How thoughtful. You can set those down with the appetizers." Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and pine, each corner decorated to perfection. Crystal dishes gleamed on the buffet table, stacked high with catered hors d'oeuvres from Fraser's Fine Dining downtown. A single tray probably cost more than Sarst's weekly grocery budget. From his study, her father, Wallace Conrad Stone, emerged with a booming voice. His salt and pepper hair was combed back like a politician's. He bent to pat Jake's head awkwardly, hugged Emma slightly warmer, and then turned to his daughter. "Merry Christmas. Did you hear? The Johnsons next door bought a boat. In December. A boat, can you believe it?" He shook his head, both ridiculing and admiring in the same breath. Sarsts placed the brownies down beside a crystal platter of shrimp cocktail, their parchment paper looking as out of place as a barn cat at the symphony. She swallowed the humiliation, smiling faintly as Emma carefully arranged her handmade cards on the entry table. For a fleeting moment, she thought perhaps, just perhaps, they might get through the evening with dignity intact. Then the door burst open without a knock. Tessa Blackwell, her younger sister, swept in like a blizzard in a designer coat that likely cost more than Sarst's mortgage. Her husband Jerry Blackwell lumbered behind her, arms straining under glossy shopping bags wrapped in metallic paper. 2 teenage sons trailed close, eyes already glued to their brand new iPhones. "We're here," Tessa announced, as though her arrival completed the holiday itself. She shrugged off her coat, revealing a cashmere sweater in festive red, and dumped her purse, another Prada, on the console table beside Emma's hand-colored cards. Carolyn clapped her hands together like a child. At last, let's open gifts. The words hit Sarst's like a physical blow. Jake froze mid-step, his mittened hand tightening around Sarst's fingers. Emma's eyes flickered toward the tree, immense, glittering, surrounded by nothing. For once Sarst had allowed herself hope. No gifts, her mother had said. A level playing field at last. But as the glossy packages piled beneath the tree, and her sister's laughter rang out like silver spoons clinking, Sayers felt the humiliation sink deep into her bones. The humiliation was complete when her father chuckled. "Well, Monica, relax, it's Christmas. We just did what we could." Emma's small shoulders sagged. Jake bit his lip, and in Sayers's chest, something old and bitter stirred awake. The living room of the stone house bloomed into chaos as Tessa Blackwell's brood dropped their glossy bags at the foot of the 12-foot Christmas tree. "Careful with that one," Jerry warned, hoisting a box so large it nearly eclipsed his chest. "That's the gaming laptop." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Emma's head turned instinctively, her gaze locking on the shiny silver box now nestled beneath the glittering branches. She glanced down at her handmade card, the crayon lines suddenly looking childish against the sparkling packaging. Carolyn clapped again, her pearl bracelet jingling. "Let's not waste a moment. Children, open your gifts." Paper ripped like gunfire. Bays fell to the floor. One of Tessa's boys tore into a sleek black box and shouted, "Apple Watch." He slipped it onto his wrist immediately, the screen lighting up his smug grin. The other boy held up a stack of glossy tickets. "Disneyland," he crowed, waving them high. "Mom, Dad, thank you." Sayers Blackwell stood frozen near the buffet, the smell of shrimp cocktail and brie turning sour in her stomach. She heard Jake's soft gasp at her side. His small hand tightened in hers. Mateo's jaw flexed. He said nothing. He rarely did at these gatherings, but the muscles in his neck stiffened as though he were bracing against a blow. Tessa, basking in the chaos, leaned toward Sayers with a smirk. "Relax, sister. We just did what we could." She tugged at the hem of her $700 cashmere sweater, eyes gleaming. "Besides, what's Christmas without a little joy?" "Joy." Sayers forced a swallow down her dry throat. She glanced at her children, watching their pride drain away in real time. Emma's small shoulders hunched, her crayon-colored card pressed tight against her chest. Jake stared openly at his cousin's new gadgets, his own fingers trembling around his homemade offering. The humiliation struck sharper than any insult. From the sofa, Wallace Stone boomed, "Now that's what I call generosity." He raised his glass of scotch toward Tessa. "Well done, daughter." Sayers flinched. She remembered another Christmas, 20 years ago, when she had given up her spot at summer camp so her sister could attend cheerleading training. "You're so practical, Monica," her mother had praised. "Such a responsible girl." She remembered her wedding too, the small church ceremony, stripped of frills because her parents had whispered, "Let's not overshadow your sister. She might get engaged soon." All those sacrifices, swallowed quietly, wrapped in the false praise of responsibility. And now here she was again, standing in her parents' perfect living room, watching history repeat itself. At the buffet table, she placed her brownies down beside a silver platter of catered crab cakes. The parchment paper, tied with candy cane ribbon, looked like a child's project beside the uniform perfection of the catered spread. Carolyn drifted past, offering Sayers a glance that landed like a dagger. "So thoughtful," she murmured, though her eyes had already moved on to the gleaming laptop box beneath the tree. Humiliation flared again, when Tessa's husband Jerry spoke loudly, as though he meant for everyone to hear. "Worth every penny. $2,800 for the laptop, but the boy's education will be worth it." He chuckled, ignoring the way Jake's eyes widened. Mateo set his glass down too hard on the buffet, the ice clinking sharply against crystal. Sayers reached out, brushing his wrist in silent warning. "Not here. Not now." Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. Her voice was small, fragile. "Mom, can we play downstairs?" Sayers nodded quickly, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "Of course, sweetheart." She sent both children toward the basement, shielding them from the spectacle of wrapping paper and squeals. Yet the noise followed. Each gift unwrapped felt like another stone added to the mountain pressing against her chest. The boys cheered again, headphones, AirPods, while Carolyn laughed in delight. Sarah stood quietly, an outsider in her own parents' house. Mateo's eyes found hers. He didn't speak, but the question sat there, heavy as the snow outside. How long will you let this go on? The evening dragged. She answered polite questions about Emma's schoolwork, about Jake's spelling tests, about Mateo's shifts at the hospital. Each one was delivered with a patronizing tilt, as though their modest life was quaint, something to be examined but never respected. By the time dessert arrived, Sarah's humiliation had calcified into something else entirely. Her father bragged about his golf game. Her mother corrected her posture at the table. And all the while, her sister lounged on the sofa, her manicured nails tapping against her phone as though Sarah's weren't even there. When the last of the presents had been opened, Emma crept back upstairs, her eyes searching for her mother's approval. She held her card out timidly toward her grandmother. Carolyn took it between two fingers, scanning the crayon-colored words. "How lovely, darling," she said flatly. Set it there on the table. The pride that had flickered in Emma's eyes vanished like a candle in wind. Jake pressed close against Sarah's side, whispering, "Are we poor, Mom?" The question asked in a child's tremor, cut deeper than any insult. Sesworth forced a smile for him, patting his hair, but inside something cracked. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the cold clarity of betrayal revisited again and again, until the wound no longer bled but froze. The snow was falling heavier when they finally left that night. Sesworth carried the empty brownie pan to the car, her head bowed against the wind. Mateo brushed frost from the windshield in silence. The children buckled themselves into their seats, their faces pale with disappointment. As Sesworth turned the ignition, the mantra echoed in her mind one last time. Presents, not presents. But now it sounded hollow. What remained instead was a vow she didn't yet have words for, but would by dawn. The drive home was silent. The only sound the steady swish of the wipers clearing the snow. Sesworth's children drifted to sleep in the back seat, their small heads lolling against the seatbelts, candy cane ribbons still clutched in their fists. Beside her, Mateo stared straight ahead, jaw set, the glow of the dashboard outlining the tension in his face. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The night had etched its humiliation into both of them, like frostbite. By the time they pulled into their modest ranch house on the edge of Green Bay, the snow had thickened into a curtain. Sesworth carried the empty brownie pan inside, her shoulders tight. Mateo lifted Jake from the car, his small body limp with sleep, while Emma trudged upstairs with her stuffed koala tucked under her arm. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. No glimmering wreaths, no catered spreads, just the faint smell of yesterday's stew lingering in the kitchen. Sesworth set the pan down on the counter, her hands trembling. Shame, humiliation, anger. They all fought inside her chest, but above it all, something sharper took root. Clarity. Hours later, when the house had settled into the hush of sleep, Sesworth sat at the kitchen table, the glow of her laptop casting pale light across her face. The clock read 1:47 a.m. Steam rose from a chipped mug of chamomile tea, untouched. She opened her bank account. Scrolling through transaction after transaction, her stomach sank. There it was, just as she had half suspected, but never let herself face. Her parents' property insurance, $1,400, charged to her card, just until next month, that had been 13 months ago. Her mother's cell phone bill, $65 a month, running quietly for 4 years. Until we figure out a better plan. The Verizon family plan, her account, but carrying not just her own line, but 3 others. $318.75 every month. Amazon Prime, Spotify Premium Family, Netflix, all shared with her parents and Tessa. Then came the sharpest cut of all, the $1,000 emergency dental bill Tessa had called about just 3 months earlier. Sarah remembered how desperate her sister had sounded over the phone, weeping about an abscess and no money to cover it. Sarah transferred $200 instantly, her fingers shaking with guilt. Weeks later, she'd scrolled through Instagram and seen Tessa on the beaches of Cabo San Lucas, her gleaming teeth catching the Mexican sun. One by one, the charges stacked higher. Her heart thudded as she opened a fresh spreadsheet, fingers flying across the keyboard. She titled the document with a single word, reclaiming column by column, she entered the numbers. Insurance, phone plans, subscriptions, emergency loans. The total ballooned with each entry, rising like snowdrifts against a locked door. $5,000 a year, taken from her household. Money that could have sent Emma to the swimming lessons she had begged for all summer. Money that could have covered the furnace repair they had postponed, again and again. Money that could have paid for Mateo's paramedic certification program, the one that promised a 30% salary increase. Her vision blurred. Not from tears, she'd cried too many already, but from something colder. A bone-deep realization that this wasn't generosity, or sacrifice, or responsibility. This was theft, disguised as family. Her hand hovered over the mouse. She clicked on Netflix. 3 keystrokes, and the secondary profiles vanished. Amazon required more time, removing each authorized user one by one. Spotify, gone. The Verizon site was trickier, but by 3 a.m., 3 extra lines had been transferred off her account. Subscription by subscription, membership by membership, Sarah's cut the cords. No drama, no tears. Just the precise, methodical correction of an error that had persisted too long. When she finished, she added one more column to the spreadsheet, reclaimed. The total glowed back at her $612.71 every month. Her lips curved into something strange, unfamiliar. Not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. It was the look of someone who had just pulled a dagger from their own chest and realized they still had the strength to wield it. The kitchen light flickered. Sarah's turned her head. Mateo stood in the doorway, his hair rumpled from sleep, his broad shoulders sagging beneath a faded t-shirt. His eyes moved from her face to the glowing laptop screen. "It's 5 in the morning," he said softly, pouring water into the kettle. "You okay?" Sarah's turned the screen toward him. The spreadsheet glowed between them like a confession. "I think I will be," she whispered. He studied the numbers without surprise. His lips pressed together, then loosened into the faintest smile. "I've wanted to suggest this for years," he said quietly. "But it wasn't my battle to fight." "Why not?" "Because you had to be the one to take it back." The kettle whistled. He poured hot water over a tea bag and set it gently beside her. His hand rested warm on her shoulder.
"What made tonight different?"
Cesar's throat tightened. She saw Emma's face, the way she had clutched her handmade card while her cousins tore into boxes worth thousands. She heard Jake's trembling question, "Are we poor, Mom?" echoing in the dark. "The look on Emma's face," she said finally. "I won't let them make our children feel less than. Not ever again." Mateo bent, pressed his lips to her temple. "Then let it burn, love. Let it all burn." Cesar stared back at the spreadsheet. A quiet vow settled over her like fresh snow. "I brought brownies to Christmas," she murmured, almost to herself. "My sister brought luxury gifts, but she forgot one thing." Her fingers tapped the glowing numbers. "I keep the receipts." The morning after Cesar's canceled the accounts, the phone began buzzing before dawn. At first she ignored it. 47 missed calls by noon. Then the texts came. "Mom, what have you done? Cesa, fix this now. You made Mom cry. Dad, this is unacceptable. After everything we've done for you." Cesar's placed the phone face down on the counter and poured her coffee. For the first time in years, she actually tasted it. When the knock came, it wasn't a polite tap. It was fists hammering the front door. She opened it to find Carolyn and Wallace Stone on the porch, both red-faced with outrage. But they weren't alone. 2 Green Bay police officers stood awkwardly behind them, shifting in the winter cold. "This is my daughter," Carolyn declared, her pearl earrings catching the morning light. "She hacked our accounts and stole our services." Officer Murphy, a young man who looked barely older than Tessa's boys, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, can you explain the situation?" His eyes flickered, already weary. This was not the emergency he had expected when dispatched. "Certainly," Cesar said calmly. She stepped aside, inviting them into the modest living room. The officers entered. Her parents hovered in the doorway, like vampires waiting for permission. On the coffee table, Cesar had already prepared a blue folder. Inside were printouts of every account, bank statements, phone bills, subscription charges. Each page bore her name in bold letters, as the responsible party. "These accounts," she said, sliding the papers forward, "are all in my name. I've been paying them for years. Last night, I decided to stop. The older officer scanned the documents, nodding slowly. Looks like a civil matter to me. Not a criminal complaint. He turned to the parents. These accounts are legally in your daughter's name. She's entitled to cancel them.
She?
Carolyn's lips pinched into a thin line. She did it without warning. We were in the middle of a program, and Rick missed the golf tournament broadcast. The younger officer glanced at Somerset, embarrassed. Civil matter, he repeated. Wallace's voice boomed, echoing through the small living room. Family doesn't do this, Somerset. She stood in the doorway, her children peeking nervously from behind the staircase. Exactly, she said softly. The family doesn't take advantage and call it love. The police excused themselves, leaving behind only the echo of slammed car doors. Carolyn hissed on the porch, "You'll regret this." But Somerset felt nothing but the strange lightness of relief. 2 nights later came the recital. Snowflakes drifted lazily as families crowded into the elementary school auditorium, carrying programs and peppermint punch. Jake wore his tree costume, branches made from pipe cleaners and felt, while Emma clutched her recorder with nervous fingers. Backstage, Somerset knelt to fix Jake's crooked branch. "You'll do great," she whispered. The show began. Kindergartners stumbled through a snowflake song. Second graders read poems about winter. Somerset applauded, her chest swelling with pride when Jake delivered his line with perfect seriousness. The seasons change, but the trees stay strong. Then Emma's recorder ensemble took the stage. Her eyes found Somerset in the crowd. Somerset smiled and nodded. Emma played her solo without a single mistake. Applause thundered. Pride warmed Somerset's chest, displacing weeks of shame. But as families gathered afterward in the cafeteria for cookies and juice, the spell shattered. Tessa swept in, heels clicking against the linoleum. She carried 2 glossy gift bags, the metallic wrapping paper shimmering under fluorescent lights. Her sons trailed behind, smirking. "We brought something special for our stars," Tessa announced loudly, her voice pitched high enough for the surrounding parents to hear. Emma's recorder trembled in her hands. Jake's eyes lit up hopefully. Somerset stepped forward, blocking their path. "We said no gifts, Tessa. Please respect that. They're just little tokens." Tessa sneered, her voice carrying, "Don't be so controlling." She tried to push past. Somerset held her ground. Her voice was steady even, but sharp enough to cut glass. "No means no." A hush fell across the room. Other parents turned, watching. The principal shifted uncomfortably near the cookie table. Tessa's cheeks flamed. "You're punishing the children because you're angry at us." "The children are doing wonderfully," Somerset replied. "They don't need expensive gifts to know they're loved." Silence. Then slowly Emma stepped closer to her mother, slipping her hand into Somerset's. Jake did the same. Tessa's face contorted with fury. She spun on her heel, storming out with gift bags, still clutched in her manicured hands. Jerry followed reluctantly, muttering under his breath. Carolyn lingered, torn. Her eyes flicked between Emma helping a kindergartner reach the cookie tray and Jake proudly showing off his costume. Something softened in her expression. For the first time, she seemed to see what was in front of her children thriving without the crutch of material showmanship. "They worked so hard," she whispered. "Yes," Sawer said firmly. "And that's worth more than any gift." Carolyn touched her daughter's arm lightly, then turned to follow Wallace out the door. The hush in the cafeteria lifted. Parents began murmuring again, but now their voices carried admiration instead of judgment. One mother leaned in to Somerset and said quietly, "It's refreshing to see someone set limits. We drown in stuff every year." For the first time, humiliation had shifted outward. It was Tessa who had stormed out under watchful eyes. It was Wallace and Carolyn who left unsettled, their certainty fractured, and it was Somerset who stood tall. Her children at her side, pride restored. Mass. That night, as snow thickened outside, Sawer sat with Matteo at their dining table. She laid 2 fresh spreadsheets between them. One, labeled Reclaiming, listed everything she had cut. The other, labeled Add Back, glowed with possibility. Emma's swimming lessons, the furnace repair, Matteo's certification program. Her husband's hand found hers. "So what comes next?" he asked. She looked at the papers, then at her children laughing in the next room. "Next," she said, "we live for us." But she knew deep down, one more storm was coming, and she was ready. 6 months passed. The Wisconsin snow melted into spring, then into the heat of July. Say Blackwell knelt in the backyard garden, guiding Emma's small hands as she patted soil around a tomato seedling. Jake dug furrows with a plastic spade, his tongue caught between his teeth in fierce concentration. The air smelled of damp earth and fresh grass. Careful with that one, Say told Emma, brushing dirt from her fingers. The stems are fragile. Emma nodded solemnly, the copper streaks in her hair catching sunlight. I'll take care of it, Mom. Life in the Blackwell household had changed. The house felt lighter, somehow rooms no longer carrying the weight of hidden bills, ceilings no longer pressing down with silent obligations. The constant vibration of family demands had gone quiet. No surprise charges. No begging calls. Just space to breathe. Mateo was studying again, taking night classes at Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, working toward his paramedic certification. The pay raise would come soon, but already his eyes gleamed brighter when he came home, his textbooks tucked under his arm, his pride restored. Emma no longer asked if they were poor. She dove into swimming lessons twice a week at the YMCA, her kicks growing stronger, her laugh echoing across the chlorinated pool. Jake built Lego fortresses across the living room carpet, crowing with victory when he toppled them in mock battles. The spreadsheet Say once called reclaiming had given birth to a new one. No guilt budget. Each dollar now had a place, not stolen, not demanded but invested into their own lives. And yet the wider family stormed. Tessa had cut Say from her contact list entirely. Carolyn, wounded and stubborn, called only when she felt brave enough, her tone stiff with unspoken reproach. Wallace, too proud to admit his defeat, said little at all. But rumors spread like wildfire. Aunt Beverly called one night, her voice dripping with false concern. Your mother says you're having financial troubles, dear. Do you need help? Uncle Steve wrote an email. We heard about the breakdown. Everything okay with you and Mateo? Say's cheeks had burned, realizing her own parents were poisoning the well with whispers. But then came a surprise. A message from Aunt Joanne. Good for you, Say. I did the same thing with my son last year. Had to stop the bleeding. Don't let them drag you back in. A cousin sent a thumbs up. Another relative called her brave. The ripple effect spread, and slowly Carolyn and Wallace began to show cracks. Milas. The first sign came on a Saturday afternoon in June. Carolyn called on her own line, no longer paid by Say. Her voice was hesitant. Would the children like to go fishing with Grandpa next weekend? Just us. No cousins. Saris hesitated, the silence stretching long. Then she glanced at Emma and Jake, who were building a tower of blocks in the corner. Their faces brightened at the word fishing. Yes, she said finally. But only if you come on time, and no gifts. The pause on the other end was heavy, but Carolyn agreed. Milas.
Hand.
The second sign came at the doorstep, 6 months to the day since Christmas. Carolyn arrived holding a small gift bag. Say's shoulders tensed instantly, ready for another breach. I know we said no gifts. Carolyn said softly, standing awkwardly in the doorway. But I found this in the attic. She held out Emma's baby book, edges frayed but pages intact. I thought you might want it. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't tickets. It wasn't a glossy box with a price tag designed to impress. It was simple. It was thoughtful. Say studied her mother's face, searching for mockery. For once there was none. Come in, she said, stepping aside. The words felt strange in her mouth, like a new language. Inside the house was modest but warm, home in a way the Stone estate had never been. Carolyn looked around at the children's laughter, at Mateo sitting at the dining table with his textbooks. Something softened in her expression. That night Sayre sat at her journal, pen scratching across the page. She wrote, I couldn't make my family honest. But I could make my home fair. I couldn't stop them from taking. But I could stop giving what they never respected. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. Real love makes room for everyone to stand tall. She closed the book, her heart lighter. My autumn, when the leaves turned gold, the invitations looked different. Her parents asked, not demanded if the Blackwells wanted to join Thanksgiving. They added, only if you're comfortable. It was progress. I'm perfect, fragile, but progress. Say's children thrived. Mateo advanced, and she stood taller. No longer the responsible one, who quietly sacrificed while others flourished. No longer the easy mark, the family mule. She had brought brownies to Christmas. Tessa had brought luxury gifts, but in the end, Circe had brought something her sister never could. Receipts, and when she laid them out, calm, clear, undeniable, every ounce of humiliation turned into power. The humiliation no longer belonged to her, it belonged to them.